Hello, my name is Glen Williams. I'm the CEO at Cyberfort. I'm delighted to be here today to talk to you a little bit about some of the challenges boards face from a cyber and risk perspective. Now, a bit of background about me. I've been CEO of PE-backed businesses for the past 11 years, and I've done a couple of exits. And today I'm delighted to be joined by Emily Rees, our CFO.
Thank you for having me. Yes, my name is Emily Rees. I'm the CFO at Cyberfort. I've been here for just over a year now. Prior to that, I've held a number of senior finance roles, but most recently as a CFO of an AIM-listed technology business.
So Cyberfort's a relatively small business, circa 200 employees, and as a CFO in a relatively small organisation, you've got to wear a number of different hats and take lots of responsibility from a risk perspective. So how do you manage and deal with all that?
You're 100% right. As a CFO these days, there's an extremely broad remit in terms of what we have to cover. And that does include managing the risk register, which includes cybersecurity risk. What you'll find in smaller businesses, either private or public businesses, is that you might not have the capability of a pure technical head that's able to cover those risks. So it comes down to the CFO managing that risk register and ensuring that management are fully on board and aware of all the risks in the business, including our cybersecurity risks. That's why we ensure it's a standing agenda item every board meeting, and there is full coverage of managing that risk in the business.
And you mentioned a moment ago, you touched on cybersecurity, and obviously we work for a cybersecurity business, but also we've got fiduciary duties as board directors and what we need to do. And what I often see is that risk and the risk of cybersecurity is not really taken as seriously as it should be by boards. So how do you see that kind of balance between the risk appetite that boards are prepared to take? How do you see that, and what do you think that people should do more of?
100%. What I think people need to do is manage their cybersecurity risk almost like how they manage their financial risk, which is already on most risk registers that you'll see in any business, regardless of the size. We need to look at managing the cyber risk in exactly the same way. That means having a plan, the right controls, what we're able to do to mitigate that risk and ensure the right actions are taken. And it is an investment into the business to ensure to do that, but we know that protects the interests of our investors, or if you're in a listed business, also for your shareholders in the external market.
So that makes perfect sense, Emily. But do you think other companies are taking it as seriously as potentially you and I do?
I don't think so. From my prior experience, what you'll typically find in smaller businesses with really lean management structures is that there's that lack of representation on the board in terms of the technical expertise to really understand the actual current risks in cybersecurity. And the problem with that then is there's no true representation of that, which means that the true risk isn't being managed and considered by the business, because most of the time it is the expectation that the CFO should be able to manage and understand all of the risks. And as a CFO myself, that is particularly difficult when you're not necessarily a technical expert in that field.
Oh, that makes sense. And the other thing you see with most boards is, they're also made up of a lot of ex-finance people.
Yes.
So you've got lots of ex-CFOs sitting on a board who are not technical experts either, all sitting around a board. And they understand the value of doing a financial audit, but do they really understand the value of doing a cybersecurity audit? I'm not sure they do.
I don't think they do either. I think they see it as an expense and a cost of the business. They don't particularly understand the benefits that brings, when really they need to turn that on its head and look at taking these cyber audits or doing reviews of their cybersecurity and looking at it as an opportunity in order to strengthen the business and to ensure that our stakeholders, both in terms of shareholders, employees and owners, are covered in terms of our cybersecurity risks.
I think you're exactly right. A lot of people don't take it seriously enough. When you think about things like M&S, COP and the recent breaches, boards are aware of this, but they're not really truly aware. And as you say, all the risk sits with the CFO often. So I think our message out there to any CFO is you need to take this seriously, and you potentially need some help with it.
100% you need help. CFO, as we keep saying, is wearing a lot of hats. We cannot be an expert in everything that we do. It's most important in that CFO role to know what you yourself are particularly good at delivering value for, but where you're always going to need help in terms of getting assistance in the broad remit that the CFO position now covers. Therefore, it's really important to know where those gaps are in terms of your risk, where there's a lack of understanding, and being able to go out to the market and find someone who can help you ensure that your risks are managed, covered and planned for.
Absolutely. And this isn't a sales pitch, but in reality is if you're going to go and get an audit done, a financial audit, you need an expert to do that. If you're going to get a cybersecurity audit done, you need an expert to go and do that.
Exactly. Otherwise, it's still the blind leading the blind. You need an expert in it to be able to tell you specifically what you need covered in terms of your cybersecurity risks for the type of business you are. And cybersecurity firms will be able to do that, understand the work that you're carrying out as part of your business, and where they'd be able to ensure that your risks are managed.
I absolutely agree, Emily. And I think that people now need to take into account they need to be resilient to any potential cyber attack, as well as being able to deal with it should it happen. So that resilience and building in that resilience is super important. I think what I'm seeing and hearing in the marketplace with the Cyber Resilience Act coming out, government are going to legislate that people have to prove that they've been resilient in doing so. So what is it you do as a CFO in ensuring that resilience is put in place? Should anything the worst ever happen, that you've done everything you can do to make sure the business is prepared as best it can be?
The main thing that we do is run resilience drills. Essentially what that means is we impersonate what a ransomware attack by a bad actor would look like in our business. First and foremost, what that really does is ensure that the controls that are listed in the risk register against our cybersecurity threats are actually working in a real life situation, or as close to real life as we get. But what it also helps us do, and this is true in either a private or a listed business, is ensuring that we have the right planned communication for how we address those types of incidents, both internally and externally. And that can be either to customers or to investors if you're a listed business. Having clear communication ready to have in place in case of an incident shows both to regulators and our shareholders that we're able to manage a cyber incident proactively, and that also ensures that there's minimal impact longer term on the share price.
So in essence, what you're telling me is you have to plan and be prepared for any potential cyber attack, and showing you're cyber resilient. And particularly with government legislation that's coming downstream, you definitely need to be ready for it.
100%.
So Emily, part of being cyber resilient is obviously managing your supply chain, and not all attacks and threats come from within the four walls of your business. So what is it you do from a kind of managed supply risk perspective?
That's completely correct. Sometimes we're so focused on looking at our own internal controls as part of a risk register, especially if you have a really lean management team in a smaller business, whether listed or private. Essentially what that means is you miss the obvious other factor, which is how your external suppliers, if they have a security incident, how that would actually affect the performance of your business. So that's why you need to ensure when you're looking at your risk register that you're covering not just your internal controls, but also what controls do you have place with suppliers within your business, whether new or existing, to ensure that they are managing their own cybersecurity risks effectively. The main thing that we really do in terms of this is ensure that as part of onboarding, due diligence, and as annual audit procedures, we look at our suppliers and ensure that they are covering their own cybersecurity risks to the required level that gives us comfort that we are minimized from any effects of a cybersecurity attack on their own business.
That sounds like a very sensible approach, and it's probably one that a number of companies wish they'd have done who've recently had some attacks. If they had have taken that approach, potentially these attacks might not have happened.
That's true.
So Emily, I think all boards have got a good understanding that cybersecurity is a risk, but I think they get lost in the technical jargon of what the real issue is. So how do you kind of bridge that gap between kind of helping make sure the board understands what the risks are and not bombarding them with technical jargon?
I think the best way to be able to manage that is to talk about your cybersecurity risk like every other risk that is what a non-exec director is used to seeing within that risk register. So it's taking those technical discussions about cybersecurity and essentially boiling it down to 3 points. What is the financial exposure from the risk? What is the operational impact? And what is the reputational risk if something were to go wrong? Putting it into the same context as other parts of the risk register should help them to understand the impact that a cybersecurity incident could have.
I completely agree. And I've seen you demonstrate that at board meetings that we've been at. And I think it resonates with the board people who don't necessarily come from a technical background. One of the challenges you do see sometimes, though, is there's an over-reliance on the IT guy who comes into the board meeting. So I think anything that you can do to help bridge that gap and unpick that jargon is really helpful for the board. Yeah. A lot of boards have invested in things like Cyber Essentials Plus, but a lot of them just see it as a tick box exercise. How can you truly show that your investments in cybersecurity are really working?
I think the main thing to do is look at your cybersecurity as a set of KPIs like you do any other operational KPI within your business. So that means not taking it as a separate IT discussion outside of the main operational meetings that you have. It's including these KPIs with all the other KPIs in your business, with a particular focus on number of incidents, time to recover from an incident, and lowering the potential financial impact from those incidents. Putting it in the same cadence as all of your other operational KPIs will help to ensure that you are keeping on top of your cybersecurity risks, but also seeing the benefit from the controls that you have in place.
Yes, I agree. And that's something, again, that we've seen in our boards and in the presentations you've given to the board. Is something that we see and we review on a regular basis. So as a board director, I've got a fiduciary duty and we've got a fiduciary duty to make sure that we're protecting the company and making sure that we're eliminating risks as much as we humanly possibly can. And this is a huge risk to every single company out there today. And I don't think that people take it seriously enough. I think people think they've got cyber insurance, they've got a bit of Cyber Essentials Plus, and that's fine. That's all you need. But they need to do far more than that, and they just don't take it seriously enough. So how can we get people to take this seriously? I mean, do we have to make people aware that if they don't do anything, what the impact to them is? Is that the best way of doing it? I don't know.
And obviously the impact, if you were to not do anything, can be significant. As a listed director in a business, whether private or public, you have a fiduciary duty to manage the business in the correct way and with the right due diligence. And if you're found to be negligent, you can be held personally liable for damages that are done against the company from a drop in the valuation of that company from your actions. What I would generally say is that it's a never-ending game. It's a continuous improvement exercise to look at your cybersecurity, not just as a tick box, as you mentioned earlier, but always keeping in mind that the cyber criminals out there are always moving forward in terms of how they progress with their sophistication of attacks and how you always need to be one step ahead of that.
That's 100% right. You've got to stay one step ahead of them at all times. And that's why you need to work with partners and experts who can support you in doing this, because you can't do it by yourself. There is no way any company in the world can be experts on everything, certainly not experts in cybersecurity. So that's where you need people who can come and help you.
That's right, 100%.
So Emily, we've probably got a load of CFOs out there who are all wanting to understand, okay, they've heard what you've had to say, they've got a good sense about some of the challenges there, but then what next? So what would be kind of the 3 bits of advice you would give them on what they should do next?
The 3 main bits of advice that you should take away is, number 1, to look at your cybersecurity risk like you do your existing risks, your financial risks. Look at them in terms of your financial exposure and your operational impact. Also, keep in mind that as a CFO, you cannot be an expert in everything that you do. Ensure that you work with a qualified third-party provider who would be able to give you the technical expertise which you will not be able to cover to understand the risk of cybersecurity in your business. And the final point is that this is a continuous improvement exercise. The job is never done in ensuring that you are secure against cybersecurity risks in your business. Always looking at new ways to improve your ways of working and benchmark your performance to stay ahead of the cybersecurity criminals.
Thanks, Emily. I'm genuinely lucky that I've got somebody like you as a CFO working alongside me who's able to keep us so safe and secure. Also, the fact we work in the cybersecurity business does help.
It does.
But I think to anybody out there, any CFO or CEO or board member, it's worthwhile listening to kind of your advice and what people have to say. I deal and speak with a lot of CEOs and CFOs, and they don't take this as seriously as they should do. It's a risk to their business, it's a risk to the economy, so they need to take it a lot more seriously than they do. And hopefully they will do based on your feedback.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Emily. Really appreciate the time and effort you put into this day. Very much appreciate it.
Thank you.
So this is the first of a number of executive briefings that we're going to be providing. We at Cyberfort believe there's an awful lot we can do to help protect organisations and support boards in keeping them as safe and secure as they possibly can be. We'd very much like you to follow us, like us, and share this content. And should you require any more information, please reach out to us on the email below. We'd very much like to hear from you.